Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to a new More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith, and like he said, Happy New Year, and welcome to our first episode of 2023.
Yeah, and um, feel free to tell us, like in the comments on Facebook and YouTube, how your holidays went. I know mine were good, and actually, Jordan was actually with us for a couple of those days because the people he's living with, our good friends, were in COVID quarantine, so he stayed with us for a couple of days, and it was nice. Had like the whole immediate family together, me, my parents, my siblings, and plus Jordan, which was a nice bonus.
Yeah, it was really fun. I appreciate Seth and his family for hosting me for that couple of days. It really meant a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us in the comments how your holidays were, what fun you had, whatever, and I'll be sure to read them. And we'll just go ahead right now and get into our big topic of this day, appropriately, the personal highlights of the old year 2022.
Yeah, we may be in 2023 now, but we figured we'd look back at 2022 one more time just to focus on some of the good things that happened.
And it's sometimes fun to reflect on that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Because from personal experience, I can say if you focus on just the negative stuff, it's not healthy.
So, why don't we start with you? What are the ones you've got?
Well, the first one I wrote right off the bat was the production that you and I were in of Willy Wonka.
Yep, that was also on my list.
Yeah, for those who are not aware, Seth and I are part of a theater group called Artists Unlimited that allows those with disabilities to perform on stage. They do one show every year, aside from 2020 for obvious reasons. Um, and this year we did a production of Willy Wonka. I was Wonka himself, and Seth was the news reporter Phineas Trout. We both had a blast doing it. I'm sure Seth will go into it a little bit. Um, but it was an honor playing as Wonka himself. I honestly thought it was my one of my favorite roles. I don't know if it's my all time. It's definitely up there though. But I definitely had a blast doing it. A lot of fun lines, good songs to sing. And as an added bonus, my brother came from out of state with his wife and daughter to come see me. So I appreciate them for that.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and the wife and the kid for being there. And yeah, and Wonka, I think, as far as I know, has got to be like Jordan's biggest artist role to date. I mean, he's had probably like he's had lead billing in previous productions, several of them, I believe, but this is probably the biggest role he's ever gotten.
Yeah, I would definitely say so because usually the roles I get, especially in some of the more recent stuff, is usually someone who's affiliated with or associated with the main character or characters. Like Beauty and the Beast, I was Lumiere. Little Mermaid, I was Sebastian. Shrek, I was the donkey. Uh, Last year, when we started to get back into the swing of things, I was the grown up version of Simba in our production of Lion King Jr., but the whole production in general was on a smaller scale because the COVID rules were still very much in place at the time. So the cast was divided in half, and each half performed the same show on different days. So that kind of messed with the formula a little bit. We still put on a good show, but it couldn't be as big because not as many people were in it. But then come this year, when we're back in full swing, everyone's together again, and we put on this show, I would definitely say this has been my biggest role, thus one of my biggest challenges, but I was more than willing to take it on.
Yeah, and I think everyone went out there and gave it 100%, and we had I think, a very good time.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure Seth doesn't like to toot his own horn, but his performance as Phineas Trout is very much fun to watch.
Well, I'll take that. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I was able to show it to my family while I was down there for Christmas, which is a separate thing I'll go into later. Uh, they loved my performance. They loved your performance. Quite frankly, they loved everybody. But yeah, we got some of the bigger laughs from my family. I mean,
Well, thanks to Jordan's relatives for the praise or whatever. And yeah, little fun fact, kind of a side note. Well, Jordan was here for a couple days, is we actually, like most all of us, sat in the living room and watched the DVD of the performance together.
Yep. Yeah. That's one of the special things about this theater group. I'm sure there's a lot of other ones that do the same thing, but with Artists Unlimited, they film what I believe is usually the last performance. They turn that into a DVD, and anyone who orders one within the group can get one and then watch it again later. And it's kind of, for the lack of a better word, it is kind of weird when you watch it the first time because you're used to seeing it either from the side or when you're actually on the stage. So seeing it from an audience perspective, it is just a whole different feeling.
Yeah, even like when you're in the wings, like backstage, like we are, well, like say you're us, well, you're waiting for your scene. You can get at least a partial glimpse of what's going on in the moment, but you don't quite get the full picture.
Exactly. And it's like you can see some of it depending on what direction some of the actors are facing, but most of the time they're facing out at least partially towards the audience, so you don't get the full experience that the audience does until we actually see the performance on DVD.
All right, so you got anything else?
Yeah, as I brought up briefly, I went to see my family in Florida for Christmas, and this includes my mom and a good chunk of her side of the family. Up until this past summer, my mom and I, at least, we lived here in New York in the house I grew up in, no less. But due to various circumstances over the past few years and whatnot, we figured it was time for a change. So my mom, she felt led to move to Florida, and she gave me every opportunity to go with her, and a big chunk of me wanted to because I never wanted to say goodbye to her. But I figured I've got Artists Unlimited here, I've got the Campaign D thing that we've talked about on the show before, and just so many other things that I wasn't ready to say goodbye to yet. And my mom is definitely one of the most important people in my life, so that was a hard decision to make. But what also kind of led me to stay in New York was I figured it would be a good wake up call to start living independently. Because up until that point, I always lived with my parents. So I felt, I should start learning how to do things on my own. And I felt like this was a good way to start. So kind of went on a tangent there, but yeah, she went to
That's
Florida.
all right.
So up until recently, I had not seen her since she and I pulled out of the driveway of our house for the last time. So when I was cleared from my job to go to Florida for Christmas, I was very excited because I could finally see her and the rest of my family down there again. I spent about a good week. We had many different fun moments, had a few good laughs. Of course, we exchanged gifts, and I just loved watching people opening things I got them. That was definitely a highlight. My mom and I, we maintained some of our Christmas traditions. Definitely the hardest moment of that trip was leaving because I didn't know when I would see her again. And there was just that slow ride up the escalator as she slowly went out of sight. And it was very hard. And I do miss her. But just the fact that I was able to go there at all to see her was one of the biggest highlights for me of 2022.
All right. Yeah. Mm, guess that meant a lot to you.
Oh, it absolutely did. I love my mom very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I love my family very much too.
Good.
Yeah.
Then I also wrote that I started a new job that so far I'm really enjoying. Uh, Long story short, I basically push carts around, put them back where they're supposed to go, and I work with other people who do the same thing to stay organized, make sure customers got what they need. And it can be a little iffy depending on the weather, but for the most part so far, it's been okay. Great coworkers, great hours. It's just a fun overall experience.
I have a question. This is kind of like, hmm, maybe this is kind of like, I don't know the word I'm looking for, a more a jump or not a jump, but have any strangers at work recognized you from Artists Unlimited?
Uh, I'm trying to think. I know there's some people that were either from artists or people outside of it that knew me already that recognized me. I want to say there was at least a couple. They didn't necessarily recognize me right away, but once I started talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, I've seen those shows," and then when I told them what character I was, like, "Oh, that was you? That's incredible." So yeah, they didn't necessarily recognize me when they saw me, but once I told them, then it clicked.
Yeah, well, I can't say that I've had a moment like that yet, but maybe someday.
Well, maybe. I mean, it certainly helps that the place where I work is right down the street from the theater where we do these shows. So who
Yeah,
knows?
just something I wanted to ask.
Sure. Very
Yeah,
fair.
okay. Yeah, anything else on your list?
Yeah, the one other thing I put in there for highlights that I could think of was my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, are in the playoffs. And depending on how they do this week, I think they can take the whole division, but we will see.
Oh, yeah.
For anyone who's watching, no, I'm not just a Philadelphia Eagles fan because they were the last team to be undefeated. I've been an Eagles fan technically for almost 20 years at this point. Um, so yeah, just figured I'd put that out there.
Oh yeah, they won like what, 10, 11 straight?
Yeah, I want to say it was 11, maybe 12, something
Yeah.
close to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they could take the Super Bowl, who knows?
If they remain consistent and everybody stays healthy, I definitely see it happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I had Willy Wonka, our production, also on my list. And yeah, I guess Jordan has more or less said it all. And it was just it's probably, I think, this is only my third live show, but I feel like it's been getting better and better. I feel like I'm growing more as a person. I'm growing better as a performer, and it's I think it's been my best show and probably everyone's as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And I can say from experience that I can relate to how you felt because it's like when you first start out, it's definitely a new experience. You're not used to it, but once you're kind of in a groove, which you've definitely gotten into, especially with this performance, then it becomes a lot easier. You're more used to it. So you just go out there and do your thing and just nail the role. And it becomes a lot more fun because of that. Like when I first started, felt a little bit awkward, but now about 10 years later, I love doing it every year.
Yeah, I have a good time as well.
Good.
Yeah. And taken. I also have I've been in a good job. I'm currently a computer helper in the Greece Central School District. I've been working in the district now where this is where I attended middle and high school here for like 2 years now, going on 3 in March. And mm, one other sort of bullet point that kind of ties with that is mm, a promotion that I was offered that it might not go into effect for a little while, but soon I'm going to be able to do some shadowing and start learning some tasks involved with this new position of computer support assistant, and the benefits and the pay would be better, a little earlier quitting time. You've got plenty of advantages.
Well, this is really exciting.
Yeah. And I had just one other thing here. Here, also NFL of Bills in the playoffs. You might notice I put a question mark in there because I'm not sure or how their postseason fate is going to end up, considering something the nation probably already mostly knows about, the Damar Hamlin cardiac emergency that resulted in a no contest, game ultimately canceled. But you know, I guess odds are it won't eliminate them from playoff contention, or it probably won't cancel the rest of the season or anything. It doesn't look like right now, but I don't know. I just put a question mark there because I'm not sure or how it's going to go. But well, just the Bills are my team, and I like seeing them make the postseason, maybe have a shot at the Super Bowl this time around again.
Yeah, and to hopefully answer that little question mark, I'm pretty sure the Bills were already guaranteed to be in the playoffs even before the incident with Damar Hamlin. I think at this point, what happens before the playoffs begin will only affect where in the playoffs they will stand.
No, you think it's just going to affect the seeding?
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that'll affect them at this point, whether they win or lose and how some of the other teams do, because it can be dependent on that. But I'm pretty sure the Bills are already in. It's just a matter of how good of a position they'll be in after this week.
I don't know. I guess it's hard to tell for certain because this is something I've never seen happen in the NFL before. I think it's probably happened before, but just not as far as I've seen. Seems like there's some league officials who are conferring to figure everything out. But yeah, so
yeah, from what I remember, I think it was either NFL or football, but it was like much earlier on where somebody did collapse on the field and then he was brought to a hospital later and didn't make it. I can't remember who it was. But for those who are not in the know for whatever reason, one of the Bills players, Damar Hamlin, he just was involved in a tackle and it looked like your standard football tackle. It didn't look like anything serious. And at first, he seemed fine because he got back up. He was on his 2 feet, and then he just fell backwards and wasn't moving. And they found out it was a cardiac arrest. And props to the medical staff because they immediately went into action, more than likely saved his life in that moment. And as of either yesterday or earlier today, he is able to breathe on his own. He's able to speak. And it seems like his brain, for the most part, is intact. So it looks like he's going to make it. Thank God. I don't know what his career will look like after this point, but the most important thing is that he's okay.
Yeah, and I do not intend to trivialize the seriousness of a medical emergency like this. Just thinking, how this would affect the rest of the season.
Right.
It could, in a way, maybe affect, in fact, how the sport is played or organized from here on, for all we know. And maybe, hopefully, this will be maybe like a step in forward progress in improving the safety of the sport, and maybe maybe it'll make a bigger impact beyond that, possibly in people's personal lives, and maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they at least looked into possible ideas in the future for furthering the safety of the players and everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty much all my list, and so we'll go on ahead to the sort of smaller scale question, sort of curious question portion of the show. And this time it's, what is a TV show that you might like to see rebooted?
Yeah, that was a fun question to think about because, like, you kind of have to go back through the years of shows you've seen and be like, what would be a good one to bring back? And the first one that came to my mind was one called American Gladiator. And what the best way I can think to describe it is that it's like an obstacle course type thing where
Kind of like
generally
American Ninja Warrior before American Ninja Warrior.
something to that effect, where you generally want to get from point A to point B, preferably in the quicker time. But the catch is there's a gladiator, as they're referred to, sometimes even more than one, that are in your way trying to stop you from reaching where you're supposed to go, or like trying to keep you from scoring a certain amount of points or something to that effect. And basically they're just trying to stop you from succeeding in whatever game or course you're in.
Oh, yeah.
And at one
Yeah,
point
that
it was
might be, yeah.
but I hope they bring it back.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What about another one?
So I actually had two more, but I'm going to talk about them together because it's kind of under the same umbrella. Uh, I'm sure a lot of people already know, but for those that don't, I am a big fan of Sonic, as in the Hedgehog. And as of last month, there are now 6 different shows centered around this franchise. But 2 of the earlier ones that I kind of want to see get rebooted are Sonic Underground and Sonic Sat AM, as it's dubbed, but it's technically just called Sonic the Hedgehog. The biggest reason for that is because both shows were stopped before they finished. Like, they never actually finished the series. And I feel like bringing it back could help. With Sonic Underground, the biggest reason I want to see that show get rebooted, on top of it not being finished, is just the premise. Because in this particular show, Sonic has a brother and a sister. And this, as far as I know, this is the only iteration where that happens. So I would love to see more stories where those two are brought back, even if it's not in a reboot. I would just love to see it. And with the other Sonic show that I mentioned, like with the other one, it was also ended before it kind of finished. And this is one of the shows that people generally like to look back on when it comes to this franchise. And they just talk about how amazing it was, the story, the characters. But it ended on a massive cliffhanger. And I would love to see them, even if they didn't fully reboot it, if they just continued the story from where they left off, that'd be great. What kind of helps in this department is that there's a fan website, fan YouTube channel, something. I can't remember what their name is offhand, but they're making a fan made continuation of the series, complete with the animation style that at least closely resembles what it was back then. So there's at least some compensation there. But if they fully rebooted it and they did it right, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it's kind of crappy when something like that ends without an actual ending or a resolution. It just, yeah, I guess I kind of felt the way about the show Freaks and Geeks when I watched that. I felt like it was ultimately canceled, and I felt like there wasn't really a resolution at the end of it, but maybe they didn't have time to figure one out or produce one. I don't know, but yeah, I feel like there's some blanks that probably should be filled in with these Sonic shows, and a reboot would probably do the job.
Well, definitely. I can't imagine they'll go into a reboot anytime soon, partly because they're in the middle of a new show right now. But we'll see how that goes. I'd love for them to reboot it. They probably won't, but it would still be welcomed.
And so I thought of just a couple shows, and the first one I thought of was The Big Comfy Couch, the Canadian kids series from the 90s and 2000s. And some of you, like in our age group, probably remember seeing that in syndication on PBS or whatever. I don't know. Did you remember seeing the show as a kid, Jordan?
I do. I don't remember many details about it, but I do remember that she was kind of dressed up like a clown to a degree. She had a little friend that was always on the couch. But
Yeah.
me being the age I was when I watched that show, the part I loved watching the most for whatever reason is when there was a mess on the floor and she would pick it up and fast forward.
Mhm. That was the traditional ending of every episode. Yeah, the 10-second tidy. What's the word I'm looking for? Time lapse. Yeah.
Yeah, time lapse. That's what I was trying to think of too.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. As a kid, watching things move and fast forward was just hilarious to me.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, it still can maybe be in certain situations depicted on screen, sometimes probably.
Oh, sure. In fact, I'll even tell you,
Yeah.
when my mom and I still lived, we would often watch different YouTube videos, sometimes involving slapstick or something goofy. And often, not too often, I tried not to do it too often. But if I saw a moment that I thought would be funny and fast forward, I would go back to it, double the speed, and see if it was even funnier, which sometimes it was. But even now, I still like things moving and fast forward sometimes.
Yeah. I have some rather vague memories of watching The Big Comfy Couch when I was younger, when it was running on PBS a time or two times, really. But I can't say back then I had much appreciation for it, but something in more recent years reminded me of it, and so I went and like did some research, I found it online, and found myself really appreciating the artistic quality of it, and it is uh, a kind of show that stuck out as something that's pretty obviously more geared toward young children, um, but is not like over the top cheesy at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something that some kid shows will suffer from. It's like, yes, your general audience is younger kids, but if you stick something in there for some of the older audiences, or just make it more enjoyable in general for a general audience, then it might be better received.
I think I have to consider myself of a bigger fan of the show today than I ever was back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, like I said earlier, didn't really think much of it at the day I saw it on television.
True.
But there, Lunette the Clown was struck me as someone with a lot of charm, great energy, a great upbeat personality, and Molly the Living Doll, was nice to watch, and I think I might like to see a reboot of that. Maybe it could be with just about any actress, because with all that makeup and costume, they could, and with the right personality, they could really disappear into the role, whether it's an unknown or a well-known actress, and I feel like there's plenty of potential. I think maybe there are some themes and concepts that haven't been explored by the show in all its history that could be tackled, and yeah, I think there's a lot of potential.
Oh yeah, like you were saying, if the right person does it, they could really bring it back in full swing.
Yeah. And I just put one last one, one that I just started more recently getting into. A show that used to be actively running. Now it's just like been relegated to like reruns on Game Show Network, at least. Cash Cab. You might be familiar with this.
I am familiar with it. I don't remember the whole premise, but
Yeah, basically.
I do remember. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, some unsuspecting New York City cab passengers. There's our general knowledge trivia quizzed the whole way to their destination.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they just stopped doing it at one point?
I feel like maybe it was like, as far as I understand from my research, it was like an on again, off again show, and when the last incarnation of it just finished airing like a year or a couple or so ago.
Oh, okay.
No, but it's been running on weekends on Game Show Network. Matter of fact, I was just in the tire store getting my car inspection thing, and they had it running on Game Show Network while I was waiting on my car.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, that same tire store is pretty much where I started watching the show for the very first time. I mean, I'd heard about it, but never really watched it. And it was just not too long ago, I was getting my tires rotated for the winter, and I was kind of flipping through Spectrum channels, and I found Cash Cab and got into it and quickly started enjoying it.
So in a way, when you went back, it kind of went in a full circle.
Yeah, I guess you could say.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, I guess I like it because I feel like it's general trivia that I think I would know most of, and I don't know if I would anytime soon find myself in New York needing a cab ride and getting the opportunity to actually play on it, but I have submitted an online test for Jeopardy, and I don't know when I'll hear back. It could be within a year of the submission, but yeah, but I think it would be nice if they at least brought back Cash Cab with some new episodes.
It would be interesting. And on the Jeopardy thing, did they tell you that they would respond by a certain point, or did they just not say anything?
Oh. Well, the most I know is it could be like within a year that I submitted the test.
Right.
So yeah, but I think they said they'd let me know.
Okay, good.
Well, at least if I made it to the next step. Otherwise, I probably won't get anything, I guess.
I mean, just the fact that you submitted anything at all is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I could see you being on there. I just hope they can see it too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I did and as well as I wanted to on the test, but I'm at least I tried.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's all we've got to say for now, and I'll get to work getting this ready for post in a little bit. And thanks to everyone for watching, listening, whatever. And please tell us in the comments on YouTube, Facebook, what were your personal highlights of 2022 and what's a show you might like to see rebooted and anything else you'd like to say, hey, leave it there and continue to stream our episodes there, YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and Spotify.
Yep. And if you have anything that you would like to add to our episode today, feel free to let us know. I think Seth might have already said this, but if you have your own highlights of 2022, you can also tell us that. If you want anything specific to be talked about at some point, you can also tell us that. If you have any questions on this episode or any of the previous ones, reach out and we'll do our best to answer, whether it be in a separate video or just in the comments of whatever platform you're on. But yeah, in general, just engage with us and we'll be happy to engage with you.
Yes, please do. And until then, or next time, we'll see you soon.
Let's all have a good 2023, everyone.
Yes, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.